Hey rail fans, Train Guy here again, and it's time for the next part of our grand tour of Train Sim World 2's routes. And this time we've reached America, and we're, as the title says, westbound through New York and then down to California for this stretch. Forgetting my words there, blimey. So we'll just get cracking straight on in. It's a service I've done before. Only doing ones that I've done before, so I know I'll get to the end without any bugs or snags or problems or things like that. So this will be a fairly straightforward one. Well, the first bit should be anyway. The loading times, I swear, get ever longer for this game. However, right, so this is a 10 car set, fairly straightforward run straight to New York. There's a few stops along the way. It's not one of the ones that only does one or two stops, but it's not an all stations either. So I'll just untangle my cable from around my ankles here and just take a moment, make sure I'm remembering everything that I'm going to have to do when we fire this cab up. It's a fairly straightforward cab setup, this one, when we get in. And again, if you're using a keyboard, you can take a couple of shortcuts with doors and things like that. Save you a few moments over the pad. So we'll just get cracking straight on in. So the first thing to do, put your master key on, get the doors open, put the reverser into forward, and move your master controller into the max brake. That's by actually hitting your accelerator key, and then up here you'll see there's a charge brakes button. You can press that, or you can hold the L1 on your pad to charge the brakes. You'll see the gauge below the speedo fills up. That's us, we're good to go. And there's your ATC and your alerter up in the corner there. Never actually used the dead man's pedal thing turned on before. I don't know if it does anything. So we'll get our headlights on, we'll get the gauge lights on. I think these doors are supposed to be run closed. And just make sure you turn your marker lights off, because by default the little red ones are on at both ends, so that you've got tail lights. You need to remember to switch them off up at the front. So that's pretty much everything done. Just double check with the... Oh, let's just hit the time limits. We're not double checking anything, we're just going to get going. I'm pretty confident we've done everything. If not, we're about to find out. And everything seems to be working. So up to 40, and I am going to be driving it as if access was switched on as best I can, which is the other safety system on this train, which is not modelled in the game. So ATC's gone up to 80, but access would still be sitting at 40 just now. Access basically tied into the speedo on the HUD speedometer down there, the little red thing. Whatever that's showing you is what access would be showing. And it would be displayed on the middle column there that's currently showing the 80. So long run to the first station, get to stretch our legs a bit. Oh, and we're over speeding slightly, so just get on the brakes, acknowledge it. Again, I'm running into that issue of trains I don't drive very often catching me a little bit by surprise. It happens. Not always a lot to see along here because it's cab signalling mostly, so it's done by the displays in front of the driver. So you drive this via a combination of the ATC display and the HUD speedometer. Generally, whichever is lower of the two is the one you should be doing. That's odd, the horn's quieter now that I've opened the window. That doesn't make a great deal of sense, but... okay. So, mile and a half to Mineola. Mineola, and how do you probably pronounce that? I don't know. You can brake fairly late with this train, but what you do have to remember is that it takes a bit of time for the handle to travel fully. Today's ATC wanting us down to 40 sharpish, so just brake hard and you'll be fine. As long as you stay within a certain braking curve, it'll not kill us for it. Usually. And there we go, we're observing the ATC restriction and we made our platform just nicely. And we're we are a wee bit sharpish. We'll go for a quick look. There's not always a huge amount to see at these stations, mind you, depending on what side of the train you get out of. See if there's any immediately obvious collectibles. Is that something we have? No. No. I don't even know what the collectibles are up here, I can't remember. Maps will be one of them, because maps is always one of them. Bound to be something. There's one. So maps is one. Sometimes ticket machines are out of order and need to be seen to, but not those ones. Fire extinguishers, maybe. Okay, we better think about getting back up to the cab. Oh shit, I came further down than I thought I had. Okay. It's about 7 or 8 seconds to close the doors on this train, and you can pull the same trick as you can with the undergrounds and stuff if you need to. You can begin the locking up a bit early if you need to shave a few seconds off the stationary time. So remember, the HUD says 80, but ATC says 40, so we need to just be mindful of that, or we'll get the alarms coming on. The desk will light up like a Christmas tree, even more than it already is. Gone up to 80 now. You'll notice when the distance to the signal at the top right clicks down to 0, there's not always actually anything there, and that's simply because it's trackside equipment that's transmitting signals into the cab at that point. There's not actually a signal for the driver to see. Should probably be paying attention to the visual signals though. The basically semaphore is up is go for it, diagonal is slow down a bit, and horizontal is stop. There is a bit more to it than that, but as long as you know those, you're more or less fine. And you will usually get ATC helping to slow you down as well. So the 60 coming up ahead, we would, in reality, access would probably be lighting things up in front of us and just queuing us up for a deceleration, but we're going to have to kind of just handball it a bit. So now the line speed's gone up to 80, but ATC's just clicked us down to 60, so I think maybe it'll click up again once we pass the next signal. So clear back to 80. Approaching Jamaica, and there will be a series of slowing down events on the way in. Including one instance where the speed limit doesn't actually match any of the available displays on the driver's desk there, so it's going to say something different anyway because it's going to be under ATC. A stretch ahead where the limit's 35, but if you look at that column of numbers in the middle, it goes from 30 to 40. So where it selects an odd number in between two, you round it down. So when we come up to the 35, we're actually going to creep across it at 30. But it seems to be timetabled for that, because you generally, unless I've done something awful somewhere, you should be more or less on time. Seems like we've got loads of time to do that 3 miles, but we're going to do the last mile or so of it at fairly low speeds. Station entry's 15 miles an hour, and it's quite a long train, so you know you're looking at half a minute just on the draw up to the platform. LIRR just checking in with us again. So we're going to have to lose 45 mile an hour, 50 mile an hour basically, to be at 30. So we'll start the braking a little over half a mile out, fairly firm. What Access actually does is it tells you when to start braking on minimum brake, so fairly gentle braking. Queues everything up for you, tells you when to do it. Brilliant system when it works. So that's ATC telling us 40, but again, access would be the active system right now, so I'm just ignoring that. And that signal ahead is telling us to proceed past this one at caution, and the next one is the next main one's a stop, but we're okay because the ground signals and stuff are what are relevant here. The next sort of main one's not till other end of the station, so start slowing down now because we're actually going to get kicked into that 15. Sorry, I had to just concentrate a wee moment there. You get kicked into that 15 a little earlier than you think. ATC will come on. Because the ATC marker is not always necessarily right next to the speed limit marker, and vice versa. The speed limit marker is not always right next to the signal marker that ATC picks up on, and so it can be a bit confusing and disorientating to drive this route with the thing turned on. There's such a long platform entry that the LIRR kicks off twice on the coast through this station. So again, we're keeping quite nice time. Some services on this route, if I remember rightly, were a nightmare to keep time on. Others are not too problematic at all. I feel like there should be so much more traffic going on though. Not as noticeable perhaps from the cab, but as soon as you get out and start wandering around these stations, I've obviously been for a walk here before. But then that's why it seems so bare, is because all those branch lines you can actually go off down all of those, including the one to Belmont. So it's not that there's no traffic, it's just that it's spread out over quite a large well, it is quite a large area. It doesn't feel like a long route because you do this stretch from Jamaica out to Hicksville at fairly high speed. And the Hempstead branch line, the stations are just boom 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 one after the other, but this section it is still a decent length of route, and with the branch lines the lower speeds you tend to be doing on a lot of those. It's as big a route I think as any of them at the time were. In fact, I think it had the most track mileage of any when it came out. I could be wrong on that though. What would be cool is if they could go back to some of these routes and implement the new methods that they've got now for doing some stuff. But sadly, the way they put these routes together, it sounds like it's not very easy to just slot bits in and out of them like that. Still a good route though. It's a fun train to drive. The other one, the M3 is quite nice as well. If you like sort of commuter type stuff, metro trains. So those tracks off to the left that go under that bridge there, that's where the Atlantic Terminal services come down from. So actually the tracks are almost in the middle there, the kind of right hand side of the two tunnels. I think they come down off that hill and go up it. And then there's a really, really fast tunnel that they go through. So in fact, I've overcooked that slightly. We would be doing in fact 30 again because of the in-cab equipment access would only be able to tell us that. It wouldn't be able to show us a 35, and it'll never round up, as far as I know. And signal's all clear for us, so it's just keeping an eye on the HUD, and so we can at least get up to the ATC speed, but I suspect all the speeds are going to go up a little bit. Fraser Kirk, hello mate, welcome, good to see you. First time in a while I've driven one of these and I've not had any disasters yet, so fingers crossed now that there's somebody actually watching, that won't change. It probably will. Oh, I'm going too fast again. Oops. So now we can get it up to 60. I wonder what it's like living in those apartments when trains are going underneath. I've been in office blocks that have had underground trains, like railway tunnels, what have you, going under them, and you certainly know it's there when it goes past. I'm glad you're loving Train Sim World 2, man. It's it's no perfect, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, I reckon. I've certainly had my money's worth out of it, that's for sure. Oh, that second from last car seems to be bouncing about an awful lot, or is it maybe it's the rear one that's bouncing around an awful lot? There's much bouncage going on there. Oh, I'm going to get a warning in a second. Noticed an issue with one of the German DLCs. Stuck at a red signal at the start. Have I found that? I've had that happen to me before. Occasionally, usually just resetting the game will do it if it's a service mode thing. If it's a scenario, I haven't actually played all the scenarios, so I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say which one it was or wasn't, I'm afraid. The problem is there's something like 7 or 8 of the routes we have for German ones. That's an awful lot of scenarios. But usually if there's a problem with AI spawned in without a driver, just starting again will sort it. I think there was a patch for that very issue recently. So, less than a mile to Woodside. Again, we're making plenty of time. You have to be careful coming out of Woodside going this way because the speed limits will catch you out. It goes from 45 to 60, I think, then straight into a 30. Or it goes from the 45, like, right onto the 30. And it's dead easy to find yourself accelerating by accident through a set of points that you should be crawling through. If you can remember what scenario it was, mate, I'll try and remember some point to fire up and have a wee look to see if it's something you can work around, or if it was just a one-off. Oh shit, we're not going to make this. Maybe we are. Cool, didn't think I was going to get away with that. Brakes on this are a bit meatier than I recall them being. Cool. Mind you, there are motorways in this country that are shorter than that platform, so I did have plenty of time to get the speed down, I suppose. Right, I think this is one of these stations where it's basically a platform in the middle of nowhere. Watch the gap. Okay. We're watching the gap. That was really piss poor. I do apologise. So again, funny seeing things like this not working. Now that we're that used to them working. It's aye. Did I have a good Christmas? I did, mate. Yeah, it was a pretty quiet non-event, to be honest with you, all things considered, but that was absolutely fine. I had a fry-up for my Christmas dinner. It was tremendous. It's the best Christmas dinner I've ever had. It's great. So yeah, aye. I hope yours was as pleasant as it could be under the circumstances, mate. Was yours a good one? If you mean warped and inappropriate, then yeah, probably. Although I tend to try and not let the worst of that side of me come out when I'm doing this. Right, so ready to close up the doors again. Can't remember if we stop one more time or not. Find out now. Nope, next stop New York Penn. And then we're off to California, where we're going to bring an MP36 into service from the yard for a morning express, and then do a quick turnaround on that thing and drive it all the way up to it's San Francisco, isn't it, at the other end of that line? Yeah. There's not loads of hanging around and waiting for services to start over. There's a few minutes at the very most. So where that 60 mile per hour limit comes into force, yeah, it would be 45 at the moment if you were using access, which we can't. That 45 is going to go straight into a 30 just where we think it's going to be 60. And the reason for that is we're going across a junction. Oh, beef for dinner, good choice, good choice. I did actually have a steak in the fridge that was my second choice. my kids are all grown up in that now, so it's not like it was when they were wee, you know what I mean? It wasn't the end of the world it having to be the way it was this year. So there's that trap I was talking about, where it actually goes down to 30 to cross America's busiest railroad junction, so they assure us. Look at all that traffic just waiting to cross that junction, it's amazing. But we still love it. So 60 on the ATC and on the HUD, we can pick it up now. We're just going into the tunnels anyway. And we've also switched over to a more familiar type of signal, or at least one that's recognisable as a railway signal to most of us. This used to be where access fell apart on Train Sim World 1. It was only ever implemented on the Northeast Corridor route, and it was absolutely brilliant when it worked. It was as good fun as PZB when it worked, access and ATC hand in hand. The problem was that they didn't very often. And down here was one of the real problem areas where it became a horrible experience if you didn't switch them off. The problem for console users was there was no button you could press unless you had a keyboard to do that, because the switches for it were behind the driver's seat and you couldn't get to the click spots without standing up, and as soon as you did that, I think the safeties would all cut in anyway. So it was a thing that was vastly underbaked in the first place, and I think most console users probably missed it entirely because it was such a fiddly, horrible, awkward thing to use. And there were at least 2 points on the route where you had to be able to switch it on and off to avoid problems. You had to switch it off on the way into this tunnel, and you had to switch it off. You switched them off on the way in, and you didn't switch them on again until you were past a certain signal on the other side of the station. So you needed to work the controls twice, essentially, and that was just, there was no way to do it on console without a keyboard. And then when they brought Long Island out, they obviously the access was some sort of real nightmare system for them, because they never attempted it again. Which is a pity, because like I said, when it worked, it was actually really good. So as soon as you see some yellow and a signal start braking, it's wanting us down to 40, but we're getting spat straight into a 15. But remember, we're going up quite a steep gradient at this point, so don't stay hard on the brakes as you pass 40, otherwise you'll come to a halt about here. You've got loads of time to lose that speed. Relatively speaking, you want rid of it by the time you pass this this signal up ahead here on the right. And then ATC just kicks in to make sure we're doing what we should. That was actually a fairly, and I'm going to go through the red at the end of the platform now because I've said this, but that was actually a fairly smooth run for a train I've driven twice this year. Well, I say this year, you know what I mean. Twice in Train Sim World 2. The real potential for disasters coming up on the next one, because I'm going to attempt to do a full sort of start up and turn around of a train. Again, done a dry run of it, but you always forget something important when you're attempting to do it live, as it were. But hey, it's all part of the entertainment, innit? Quite a quick turnaround time as well on this one. So that was the Long Island Railroad. That was westbound, and now we go down. Wait a minute. Duh, shit. Right. Forget I said that. You know what I meant. So let me just find the wee scrap of paper that I wrote all this stuff down on, so I know which one to pick. Ah, right, yes, okay. So, Peninsula Corridor next, and if you just excuse me for one moment. Right, so what we want to do after a brief interruption there, not Long Island, we want Peninsula Corridor. Oh, went way too far. You know, I still think Peninsula Corridor is one of the new routes. It's crazy to see it halfway down the list there. They're in reverse order as far as I can recall. Nuts. Okay, so we're now down in California. Crappy tenuous links as promised. We want to explore, but we don't want a timetable service. We're going to start on foot. And we're going to start at I just want to see what the light level's going to look like on the autumn settings. I suspect by this time of the morning it won't make much difference. I should have gone the other way as well. Do 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 do. Yeah, so by 07:30 it makes not much difference if we're on summer or autumn. We'll just put it in summer so we don't have issues with low light levels and stuff like that. Because I know if you're watching on a device with low light level adjustment and stuff, people are playing dark games and things, it can be quite tricky to see. So we're starting on foot 7:30 in the morning at the Central Maintenance Facility, or Central Maintenance and Operations as it's called, I believe, CMOF. We're going to be bringing an MP36, I think it is. It's MP36. We're going to bring one of them into service from maintenance and turn it around, and we'll be taking a morning express service, so not many stops, and it's mid-morning, so there'll be lots of traffic out on the line. We should see signals, we should see trains, there should be plenty of stuff to do. And if you do the one that leaves at the back of 7 instead of the back of 6, you see a cool wee thing at the start as well. I think I might have done this once ages ago on a Train Sim World 1 stream, but never mind. I mean, there are only 2 directions I can go in on this route. So, that's our train there. If you have the MP15 DLC, it'll be sitting, one of them will be sitting up there. And we're going to first of all just hop on board. We're going to go to the rear cab. And when you get into it, just sit down in the seat, and that sort of just claims this as our train. Because we're going to start doing stuff. So we're only here to set those 2 switches and the number light switch. You set those 3 switches, or 2 buttons and a switch in place, and our work here is done for now. Put the door back as you found them. And then come out and close the door. Now, let's have a peek around this wee corner. Oh, what's this coming? Ah! Don't worry, there's bags of room. As long as you don't see that red circle appear, you're fine. When that red circle comes up, you can be hit by a train. You're basically on an active line. Nothing will happen, you'll just get a shove and pinged out the way when it reaches the end. Now this is actually the MP15 assembling a big long special train. You can actually drive. It is a selectable service, so we'll just walk up to the front now. We've still got a couple of minutes to go. This is where Train Sim World 2 really stand aside from other train sims, though, because you can kind of lean into it and do a little bit of RP if you want it. I mean, you can just start in a cab and off you pop, or you can start a few minutes early on most routes, and there are services where you can snag them like this, and you're doing your walk around and things like that. Game gives you no material reward for it whatsoever. It doesn't punish you for not doing it. It's entirely up to you. Right, so the first thing I usually do when I get here is just sit in the seat again. We've already claimed the train as our own, in as much as the AI won't have now surrendered it to us. But after 2 minutes you get a thing saying, do you want to give it up? So this just resets the timer basically. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the head end power. The engine's already been started for us, so the motor's running, so we just need to do everything else. So put the head end power into run, start the head end power engine, and then turn the head end power on and leave that. We need the control and fuel lines on, we need the generator field on, and we need the engine run switch on. We don't need the markers, probably want the gauge lights. All this other stuff is already set. Wiper controls are there if you need them. Don't need to worry about the train line setup thing, and that's the alerter up there basically. So into this fuse cabinet here, and the radio fuse doesn't do anything, but I always do it anyway. There's your alerter and your safety systems. And from this seat, internal cameras, and if you look at the engineer's feet, there's your MU2A valve, which it doesn't actually seem to matter if you remember to do it or not. The train will still go. Once that's set, put the brakes into passenger and release, and we'll just set ourselves the park and brake on a wee bit. I should have put the reverser in first actually, but it doesn't seem to make any difference. The brakes will now release. There's your headlight controls down there. I don't think they actually use the cruising lights very much in reality. So we're clear to go now. So just make sure all your brakes are off. Give it a little bit of power. Now that little red box around the power the power setting number, which usually turns white, stays red. Don't worry about it, it's fine. So we're now underway. And we went down the back earlier to turn on the number lights and the marker lights, which you can see are on there. And if you're wondering why the back of the train's all lit up, we've got a tail. Once I get my speed back down to where it should be, we'll have a look at that. Because what actually happens is the MP15 is following us. I have no idea if free shunting and stuff like that is allowed in here, but he's trying to get coupled up to a locomotive in a siding. He needs to pass this set of points here that we're just going over in order to trigger the next part of that scenario, because it is actually a drivable service that you can do with the MP15, but it cannot get to the trigger point until our train clears this signal, which we've got to now wait at for a few moments, no matter how close to it you draw up. So it's a little clash of the timetable in there. Not as often an issue I find when I'm driving the MP15 on that service, because I'm not as efficient and fast as the AI, and quite often this train is actually pulling out of this siding by the time I get round to this part of the proceedings. So I'm actually still quite far back from that signal. We could drop a bit closer, I guess. But like I said, it makes no difference to the MP15 behind you. He's going to be stuck sat waiting for us for a couple of minutes. So if you feel like you don't get enough red signal action in this game, Pacific Corridor, Peninsula Corridor, is a tremendous route for that very thing. A lot of the services, especially the peak time services, you will be running into signals, and horribly complicated as the American ones look, because Dovetail printed every possible variation of them in the manual. You only actually come across a handful of them, and if you just start to take a note of the ones that you see as you pass them and check what those are, you very quickly start to remember the ones that are relevant. And then very quickly you realise there's a handful of sort of rules of thumb you can stick to. As long as you remember those, you'll be fine. Excuse me if that was me slugging on my juice there was a bit too noisy. That's such a crap streamer. Bad streamer. So that's what we were waiting for. So in fact the MP15 rolls up pretty close to us. You have to be really careful as well when you go to move away from this signal. I have once rolled back and accidentally coupled up to it, because you're on a slight uphill gradient, and if you release the brakes then apply the power, you're just going to roll back the way. Otherwise that thing will just sit there patiently waiting until we move on, which shouldn't take that long. You can see we're still I can still see the back end of that train that passed going around the corner, because it has to slow down now to enter the station, and once the back of it disappears around that corner it has to clear the next signal mast, and then we should get our yellow. First time you do this, it can feel like quite a long time, but I find it's not actually as long as I thought it was the first time. I think as well the first time whenever you're doing a new scenario or timetable and you run into a red light, there's always that first thing that kicks into my mind is, should it be doing this, or have I found a signal bug? That's always my first worry when I find the red, is that it shouldn't actually be red, and it's not so often the case now as it used to be, but it's still always there in the back of your mind. So put the power in first once we've got the yellow, and then brakes out once we've got a bit of amperage on the go there. And just confirm visually that the points immediately in front of us are set to take us to the left. They should automatically set, but you would always do that visual check. They've got a name for those in America, I forget what they're called, but here they used to be known as blind points, because it's just a blind bit of track going off into nowhere. So unusually for coming into San Jose as well, normally we come in at reduced speed, but we're actually going into the outside platforms, the through platforms, so we can go up to 20 and hold that all the way through instead of the usual. I think it normally gets you down to 10 or 15 on the way in, doesn't it? Ah, the number lights didn't come on. They should when the head end power's on. So the power handle on this train moves pretty freely between power and dynamic brake. You do have to be careful with that. So we do have two red lights ahead of us on the gantry, but one of them's flashing, so that actually is telling me I'm clear to pass it. Okay, so a few seconds late. It's really difficult to make that exactly on time. What we'll begin doing is getting the cab shut down. So put the brake into handle off. Make sure that's bailed off. Cut the brakes out. Turn the headlights off. Make sure that's in idle rather than set up. We have to lock the doors to trigger the end of the scenario. I did just lock them, didn't I? Yeah. But what you do now, we've done this a few times now, is it's the old continue, and then instead of going back to the main menu, take the old return to free roam, and you'll see now service scheduled to start at 7:48. So that's only 3.5 minutes. So we now need to go through the reverse of everything that we did before. So put that into trail 2426. Again, I'm not sure how vital it is on this particular machinery. It seems to let you away with forgetting to do that. And we do not need any of the generators or the pumps. We're going to turn the markers on because that's the red ones. We don't need the gauge lights anymore, and the rest of them leave as they are. Do remember, however, to come and turn this off and that off. Because that's the alerter and stuff tied into the back end. So there's a train. Is that carrying onwards? So that'll be one of the ones going on to, I forget the name of the place where these things go. Leave your head end power turned on though, because that's providing light and power to the passenger cars. So I think we've done everything. Just visually check. Your reds are on. That black plate in the middle there, that will light up with the service number automatically. And tell you what I usually actually do before I go down is I actually open the doors up again, because why would you close them for a short turnaround like that? So we're going to run now. You can walk this comfortably, but I want a minute or two to do the setup at the other end. Oh balls, I forgot to take the reverser handle out. Okay, so we're going to be cheating slightly when we get down here, because I need to retrieve a reverser handle. So I'm just going to jump in the seat and I'm going to control plus to the other end of the train. Normally you would walk down. Normally I would walk down. You can do it however you like. Normally I would walk down and do it the proper way, but I now no longer have time. So we walked all the way down to the back of the train, and we're now sitting in our cab with little over a minute to go until the start of the service. So turn your markers off. Control key should already be on. Turn your generators and your pumps and stuff on. Just give the number lights a flick. We don't need the cab lights on, and we'll take the instrument lights, and we don't need the cab heat. That's not really a relevant thing. Put the reverser handle in. Make sure you remember to press this engine run button. That basically takes control of the engine over here. And down here is the brakes cutoff. This panel behind you, the CB panel, the strobe light's cool. We'll look at that a wee bit later on. And those are your safety systems. These are dead switches down here. And I think this train would actually run with this door shut, if I remember rightly. So we just load the passengers and set the lights as we need them. We're just going to set them to dim. Remember to cut your brakes out now. Just release and then initial reduction. You don't have dynamic brakes, you do have dynamic brakes, you don't have locomotive brakes, the straight brakes. You've only got the dynamic braking handle. You've also got no immediate way of telling what the power output of the engine is on these things, and you drive them very much by feel. So we're now all correctly lit up at either end. See, we're now service number 323. With a green. So we'll get the doors locked up. See, nice quick turnarounds on these. There's not too much waiting around on the bring them into service type effort. So the doors are now closed. Brakes are out. So just apply your power. Nothing will happen for a few moments because lag. Not game lagging, but it takes legitimately a few moments for the control input you've made to be carried out by the locomotive. So you need to be a little bit ahead of it. So get green on the ground, we're good to go. Always check the ground signals before you pull away from that. Well, from any station obviously, but this route in particular has a few nasty sort of surprises waiting for you if you're not checking signals on your way out. If you're using the alerter and you are on console, the only way to acknowledge it is to have your cursor, or that wee dot in the middle of your screen, look directly at that button or get your cursor over it and click it. It is not mapped to your circle button. I'm pressing the circle button, that switch is not responding. It is mapped to the Q key on the keyboard, however, so you do have that option, but pad users use the alerter at your own risk. It confounded me more than once before I realised that there was other ways to do it. So the first stop is 10 miles away, Mountain View. It's there's 3 or 4 stops en route on this one. Quite a good route this. I do enjoy it. The express services are usually quite fun, especially if they're going at the tail end of a bunch of stuff as we are. So there's Seamoth up ahead of us, where we started off. Now that double header train there is the thing that was being assembled by the MP15. It was trying to get that second locomotive to attach it to the head of that service there, and that is actually selectable on the timetable as well. Now, when I was putting the switches on in the cab, one of the ones I pressed was called strobe light. What the strobe light switch does is when you hit the horn and the bell comes on and the ditch lights start to flash, oh, you can't really see them in this light. The strobe lights do actually work. Well, maybe I need the ditch lights to be on actually. Yeah, there we go. Once the ditch lights are on, you can see the strobe lights just above the cab there. There you got your ditch lights on and they start to flash, the strobes will do the same thing. I only discovered that for the first time about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I was playing about with ideas for these streams. So signals are fine, all green. I know there's a lot of red on them, but for all practical purposes, they're all green. Nice high-speed-ish stretch of the line as well. I say high speed. I mean, remember when this was a fast route? Actually, I don't think it ever has been counted as one of them, because even a 160 kilometres an hour S-Bahn is going faster than this is at maximum line speed. Hella fun to drive these things though, I love them. The cab car experience is just different enough and disorientating enough because you don't have the immediate input of being in a locomotive, and this one because it doesn't have the power gauges in it even, and I think that is actually a real life feature of these cab cars. It's quite a different experience, and the MP36 itself, well, oh my word, it's huge. It is a train that very much falls into the category of those, it's like an HST. You know, it's like there are certain locomotives, one does not drive them, one commands them, and that's very much what the MP36 does for you as well. I've gone past at least 2 signals that I didn't really pay much attention to either. There are no active signalling systems along here. Got an alerter, that's it. Your only other safety systems, the Mark 1 eyeball. So as you can see, lots of traffic around peak time on this route. In the middle of the morning rush hour, then it settles down a bit through the day, and that's when the all stopping services run for a few hours through the daytime. That's when you'll see the maintenance of way trains out and things like that. It's all very, very cool if you've got those things. And then it moves on into the rush hour cycle again, where it gets really busy with passenger traffic, and then quietens down a bit. And that's when you see the freight trains and the maintenance stuff coming out again. And it's certainly one of the most alive feeling routes in terms of all the different stuff you see going on throughout the course of a day. Because when these packs come out, I tend to play them intensively, and I kind of very quickly I've seen all the different points of the day throughout them, and some definitely stand out more than others for how different an experience you have at different times of day, and this is definitely one that stood out as being one of those. If you started in the morning and just drove up and down all day in the same train, or you spent a day doing, joining services together, you do notice very quickly that there's a lot going on here. So 3.5 miles to run. See, I am paying attention. Green signals still. A bit further up the line we might start to run into cautions and things as we catch up with the stopping services that are out ahead of us. So just going to let the power off now. Still well over 1.5 miles, but this thing's got the braking performance of an aircraft carrier, so you want to be well ahead of it. We'll use a mixture of dynamic and air brakes to start slowing down. Hey Telex number, welcome mate. Good to see you. I'll be honest with you, I never really touched journey mode. I tend to play mostly in the timetable mode, and I will. It depends what I really feel like doing. I've slowed down way too early. Although we've got 2.5 minutes to cover this last half mile, so we're all right. Yeah, I usually just play different service modes. What I'll often do is string them together so that I'll have it. If I've done an eastbound, then I'll do the westbound that would be the same train coming back, or at least won't be doing the trip until the one I've already been on has finished what it was doing, if you know what I mean. That's how I try and do them, is I'm going through a sequence of them, and then over a few separate passes you end up doing all the services. Sometimes I just jump in and decide, well, where do I want to go, what do I want to do, and I just pick something that interests me. But the journey thing is actually something I've almost never used. Hanging out over that. Oh, not quite. Brakes do take a little bit of getting used to on this. They're all right once they come on, but it's that delay between the control input I make and the locomotive down the back responding to it. I tell you, the main reason I've never used the journey modes, and it sounds really silly, but I just can't be bothered sitting through tutorials I've already done. And every single journey forces me to sit through the tutorials first. I'm not doing them again. I can never be bothered. They're like, well, okay, if I want to do something that's not a tutorial, then I can do it by not sitting through a tutorial and clicking it on a menu somewhere. It's a great idea, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking the idea of journeys, I understand what they're for, I get why loads of people love using the journey system, but it's just no for me. Dovetail can't tell me what to play. Well, they could ban my account, I suppose, but I would hope they wouldn't do that. I've never been that mean about them, surely. Right, next stop, Palo Alto. I thought the light looked a bit overwhelming. I had them up to full milky. I'm not sure how they've done the lighting on here, but it is sometimes feels like it's a bit overwhelming for the time and the conditions. But it's a lot better than it used to be. It used to basically drown out everything it hit. And Train Sim World 1. Ah, so they have to actually be up to... They didn't come on when I just had the headlight on dim and auxiliary. You need to actually have it turned up to bright for the strobes to come on. Okay. Something else I've learned. Should really start paying attention to the signals, because I don't think I've done an express service on this route where I didn't run into traffic at some point towards the end, and I think that's the whole point. This is definitely, whatever you think of American railways, purely objectively as a technical achievement, this route is pretty damn good. I know that the American trains aren't everybody's cup of tea, because a lot of it is so different to what we do. But something I discovered was actually the signalling system in principle is not that different to ours. In presentation it is, but in principle it's not really. It's route based, just like the UK one by and large. They also use the same measurement system as we do, which makes it a lot easier. I think those wee strobes are so cool. Love those little details. But I'm going to turn the lights back down a shade because they're just a bit overwhelming at full whack. Right, better get ready to slow down again because we are at full speed. I'll try and do this in a bit more of a measured way this time. So with just the initial reduction and full dynamics, you can actually get a pretty good brake on here. Telex number, the lack of a safety system put me off for a long time as well, and all I can tell you, man, is that I kind of wish I hadn't taken that line. You still got the alerter. All the lack of a safety system means is that you have to be even better at doing this all by the seat of your pants. Concentrating like hell and learning the basics of the signalling. The basics of the signalling were the biggest hurdle to me, but once I realised it is fundamentally a needlessly overcomplicated variation on ours. I have described American signalling as that before, and I'm not going to change my mind. It is needlessly complicated, I'm afraid. But once you start to get your head around the principles of it, and you learn to spot the important ones that you need for this game, becomes a whole lot easier. And the fact that it's another one of these systems where if you turn off the coloured blobby thing up in that top right corner like I do, even if you've got that turned on, there's different types of green and yellow signal on the American network that actually require you to do different things. And while the game doesn't outright punish you for them or for missing them, it is there to be done if you want to. We've not seen any signalling and stuff yet, but I promise you it is almost certainly going to be there, because during rush hour you almost never don't see some signals and things on your way. So don't let the lack of a safety system put you off, man. Would be my word, especially if you've already bought it. We've got absolutely nothing to lose by spending a bit of time with it, and it is honestly a really good route. And do you know what? It's we're kind of light on routes. If you want to spend 2 hours doing a start stop passenger service along a fairly long line, your options at the moment are Northern Transpennine, Northern Transpennine, or Northern Transpennine. Everything else is actually fairly short or doesn't have that many stations, whereas this has got about, it's at least 12.5 stops. It might be even 20. It's a good 2 hour run. If you take a stopping service, it's long. It will fill an afternoon up for you doing stop start passenger stuff. That's a bit different to the endless EMUs that we're used to doing our stop start stuff in. I've been forgetting my bell as well. I'm supposed to have that. You're supposed to have that sounding as you come into a station, and you're supposed to sound it as you move off again. I keep forgetting about it. Yeah, it's a good route. And if you chuck the MP15 and the MP36 in, it's one of the most complete and varied ones as well, I have to be honest. I don't think the MP36 is vital, because I think there's still the same number of services in the timetable with or without it. Maybe. But you can still do all the same things. You can do expresses, semi-fasts and stoppers. You still get the Union Pacific stuff. The MP15 adds a whole layer of stuff in. There's no other way to get to it. And that's actually for a shunter. What they sold as a shunting pack What was marketed very much as a shunting pack turned out to be one of the most fun and interesting and varied locomotive DLCs ever for this game. So I honestly can't praise this route enough, especially when you consider my historical stance on safety systems and things like that. The more fun stoppers, the better, in my opinion, usually. But it does need to detract from this route. It's the same. It's like NTP, Northern Transpennine. The system doesn't exist on the route, so it's not there. But it's still a good route to drive. The fact as well, each train, when you think about it, with Peninsula Corridor, it might come with, two trains, but one of those trains is actually two completely different cabs. And the experience of driving from the head end of an FP40 or an MP36 and driving from the cab car end are very, very different experiences. Even the way the same systems on the train work from each end are slightly different. The brakes work slightly differently from this end, because you don't have a straight brake. Power inputs are a bit delayed. Things like that. It's, even the FP40 is really good fun, and do you know what? Those manual lap and brakes, you learn how to use those. Those will make you a better driver on anything you care to use. They're not that different to the vacuums on the 101 either. If you get used to reading the gauges, then and the slight difference in the way the controls work. I think there's an extra step on the handle compared to the Westinghouse vacuum system. But yeah, those lap and brakes, those are actually, once you get the hang of that train, it is one of the most satisfying to drive. It doesn't need a safety system to make it a challenge. Oh, we're allowed to get the warpy trucks going past. Cars or whatever they call them. The only thing I'm absolutely certain is that we must never call them wagons on this side of the Atlantic. That upsets people for some reason, unreasonably so, I've found. Just gonna get a little burst of air there. Let's curb the speed slightly. I want to look at my little strobes again because I just think those are so cool. And we're done. Yeah, I think if I remember rightly, the trick to those manual lap and brakes is they don't need as much power as they don't need to be on as much as you think they do, but they take a bit longer than you expect to come on. We need to. Oh, in fact, I've got a gauge just down at the bottom left there. Don't let the white needle go below about 80 or so, and you should be okay. Rings a bell. And that's for like really hard old shit braking. I seem to remember being able to do most of the braking at 90 or above. Of course, I've not actually driven it in Train Sim World 2, so I don't know if any of the performances have changed radically or not. But no, learning the FP40 was one of the revelations of Train Sim World 1 to me. I'd kind of not paid it much heed either. And again, it was the lack of safety systems that put me off this route. But it turned out it's really, really good. I really like this route. And I've definitely, the amount of time it's had on stream with me is not reflective of how much I actually have played and enjoyed this stream offline, this route offline. So there's another. I've lost count of how many trains we've passed so far, and we're maybe only about halfway up the line. Still all clears. Oh, I'd forgotten about those wee spark effects and things they've been talking about. Aye, right enough. I would imagine they'd looked at using that. I think the problem's not that they don't know what they need to make to put in there. It's just a question of freeing up the artist whose job it would be from whatever else it is that they're working on. They do seem to be especially short on specific types of staff. Their live streams are much to go by. So initial braking from a mile out, and we've got the dynamic brakes set up. We're probably going to be okay though. I mean, with the express services, you've probably got enough time in hand to do quite sort of to be quite cautious and conservative with your braking. Do it quite early. Be well ahead of it. So I've got minimum air brake and full dynamics on just now. I'm just going to take the dynamics all the way out because we're actually going up a hill now as we roll into the station. But I'm going to leave it in the setup mode so I can reapply it immediately if I need to, because if you put it into idle, there's then a sort of a spooling up time, if you like, when you want to reapply it. Called blended braking, and your engineering teams will adore you for it. I think I rolled a little bit longer than I wanted to. No, we're fine. It sometimes feels like you've gone out onto the wee crossing way there. Did forget my bell again though, but never mind. So it's a fairly quick turnaround. I don't know that I can't remember if I even got out for a look here though. Bound to be a collectible or two hidden somewhere, but this is one of these sort of platforms in the middle of nowhere type things that I was talking about before. I find that you don't have quite so much time in hand. The more stops you've got to make, the tighter you're going to find it to do. Or that's my experience of it generally. So we'll pop the brakes back into the idle position, and we'll get the air brakes down to minimum. Let's get the doors locked up. Can't wait to drive the big trains. Love the big trains. Big trains are the best trains. usually. Yeah, you remembered this time. Okay, next stop Millbrae, and then I think that might actually well be the... We might have to do a stop at 22nd Street. This must be the only express service in the game with no signals either, because most of the other ones you end up catching up to stuff ahead of you. There's time yet. We might catch up to something. What's that signal at? Green, that's fine. Can't even hear it from down here. No point sounding it. Another train. Probably double figures by now. So most of these stations that we're blasting through, with a couple of exceptions, because a couple of them are for some metro thing or other that we don't see, I believe. But just about every single station that we've blasted through on this run, you will stop at some point or other. If you're not sure what you're taking, the head codes tell you a lot. The head code starts with a 1, it stops at every station. If it's a 2, it stops at some of them. If it's a 3, it's an express. And look, we've got a signal that's got some yellow in it. So we're going to start braking, and that's a caution signal. That's sort of like seeing a... It's not quite like seeing a double yellow. It's like seeing a double yellow in advance of knowing it's there kind of thing. So we're going to start reducing our speed. 60 miles an hour I think it is. And then depending what the next one's doing, if it's green with a flash in yellow, we'll just maintain our speed. If it's a red with a flash in yellow, or it's just a flash in yellow on its own, we'll get ourselves down to 45. And then if you see a steady yellow, you get down to 30, because the next one's likely to be wanting you to stop. And if you see a flash in one anywhere in the middle of the signal, like the red, the top one's red, and it's a lower one that's a flashing colour, usually that's something to do with junctions. Not sure, get yourself slowed down. So that's still just the flashy yellow and green, so we'll just hold 60. One thing you will realise is that I'm a lot more rule of thumb with these signals than I would be with say PZB or something running, where I would be strictly following speed limits, whereas these are sort of vaguely half remembered from glancing at the manual back in the day. So there we go, flashing yellow over a red, so we're just going to reduce our speed a bit more. There is an element, it is a route control based system, but they do use them for speed control and traffic separation as well, obviously. So this is just, we're gaining on, it's probably stopped at Millbrae, or just departing Millbrae as we were approaching. But we'll be catching up to one of the stopping services. There's another oncoming train. And there's the same number of trains going in each direction, so we're broadly at the end of a big queue of trains like that, and they do kind of concertina up together at certain points. So there we have a steady yellow over reds, so that's the equivalent of a single steady yellow. Flashing yellow is the equivalent of a double for us, think of it that way, and a single yellow is a single yellow. I think that actually started to blink as we went past. But I'm not 100% certain, so I'm just going to shave the speed off anyway. And actually from 30 miles an hour you can stop any train on this route within visual distance of most signals. There are one or two that you might want to shave an extra bit of speed off if you're approaching them under caution. They should be fairly obvious as you get close and you still can't see them which ones they are, but there's only one or two of those that I remember seeing. So the next signal for us is actually on the entry to the station rather than beyond it. There we go, that yellow above is starting blinking, so we're good. And stop. Nice. Again, it's quite quick passenger stops here, so we're going to be more or less ready to go. I don't know how long these doors take to close exactly, so we're going to take a wee chance and say it's probably around 5 seconds. That's fine, that we got away with that, so we shaved a couple of seconds off our time there. Right, so we're going, next stop is San Francisco, there's no stop at 22nd. So from Millbrae, I think is about 10 or 11 miles altogether. That go via takes us as far as the edge of the city. Now, I have to remember that we had a flash in yellow, and we still got a flash in yellow, so I'm going to proceed at no more than 45 miles per hour. till I see the next one. And the limits are a bit slower if you're pulling freight. There is a table of all this stuff in the manual, which I do have somewhere, but I can remember the passenger ones, roughly speaking, so that was all I needed for this. But fear ye not, freight fans, because the next two routes that we're visiting, it's wagons all the way. So the next signal's coming up. Let's keep the wee eye open for that. See, you don't need safety systems for it to still be challenging and interesting. You can still have a good time without that stuff. So we've got green, we'll just give it plenty. There's a line speed limit change coming up ahead, but we're doing well to get up to it, never mind have to worry about reducing to it. There's a bit of input lag there before the controls respond. In fact, what we'll do, because we're doing alright for time, so there's the engine wound all the way down. Let me just get eyes on this signal ahead of us before I do anything silly. If we're a minute or two behind, it's not the end of the world. I think we'll be okay though. Right, so we've actually got a flashing yellow anyway. The thing whatever we're following is a stopping service, not an express. So we are going to be gaining on it. So there's the engine still winding up, and then it has to get a grip, and then we start to accelerate. See how long it took for it to wind up there after I put the power in again. So you have to be thinking a bit with these. You do have to be sort of managing your what you're going to be doing, thinking about it and doing it often earlier than you would with another train. So which big train in particular are you looking forward to, Fraser? There's a fixed yellow, so we're going to reduce down to 30. Silos of some sort over there. Oh, there's the blurry trucks again. Still a fixed yellow. I think we'll overtake the train that we're following actually at the station whose name I can never remember, which is not far up the line. blurriness. It's really annoying when that happens. I wish that was less of a thing. Ah well, can't have it always, eh? Right, signal coming up. Greens, yeah, we've got greens. So I could actually, even from 250 yards or so, you can stop actually reasonably well, I say reasonably comfortably, it's not very comfortable at all probably, but you can do it if you need to, from those low speeds. There's a station up ahead. It's a four-track station, and the two middle tracks are just through lines, which is where you do a bit of overtaking in both directions. Actually, it's an overtaking point for the expresses. It's pretty cool. First time the LIRR has come on, just there. So another thing about the cab car is it's such a hands-on thing to drive. You will rarely leave the controls room long enough for the alerter to start wondering what's happening. Horsepower. Meanwhile, up at the sharp end, or blunt end as it may be. Oh, it's gone all... See, that is starting to really annoy me now, that fuzzy sort of textury warp thing. texture warp like that hadn't been a thing since PlayStation 1, man, but there you go. Should be pretty much clear all the way in now, overtaking the service that was immediately in front of us. It kind of looks like it's a motion blur issue, doesn't it? It looks like it's it's taking all the really bad blur away from the wheels, and it has to put it somewhere else, so it sticks it on a on a convenient wagon as you go by or something. I don't know. No, I know it's not really like that, but yeah, no, it does look very much like the motion blur used to on the wheels. So it had kind of occurred to me it might be a motion issue rather than a texture warping issue. But it's not something. It's one of these things they've acknowledged it on streams and stuff, but I'm not aware of them having actually explained why it happens. Yellow on green again, so I'm just going to bring the speed right the way down to 60, and we do have a 40 coming up ahead of us. It is signposted trackside. If you know what to look for, you can see the warning sign in advance. & 22nd Street station. It's one of the few whose names I can remember, just because it's so distinctly different from all the rest. Oh, we've got a yellow signal, and the 40 zone starts a bit earlier than I remember it starting. Right, it's flashing, so we can go past it, but we're supposed to slow way down. I think you're supposed to slow down to 25 or something for those. It's like 20 or 25, something really slow. A flashing red in the US, I think, is broadly equivalent, and most of the times we'll see it, to a red with a white shunt signal in the UK. In other words, it's telling you the main line is not clear, but if you're intending on going into a siding, carry on through it, which is what we're basically doing. It's our 47th train of the run. Maybe it's not that many, but it's a damn lot of traffic on here. And because there's so few tunnels and so few divergences, um, yeah, the yellow signal we've got on the ground there, we're okay to pass it. Because there's so few divergences and stuff like that, you never have that sort of, well, there was another train there, but it was on a track that was behind that hill or those trees, or went another way, or what have you. So I don't know if that's part of it. But even taking that into account, this just feels like such a busy route compared to so many others. The only ones that really come close are a couple of the really short German ones, where if you've got all the layers turned on, you can get quite a lot going on. It's a flashing red on the ground. You do be aware of your signals coming in. I've kind of looked like I'm just cruising on by, mentioning them at the last second, but do be aware of them, because if you do get you will occasionally get quite far into the station and there's a red signal telling you to wait as something comes out. Does not happen very often. I've only experienced that maybe once or twice, but again, this isn't one of these routes where you can just assume that every service mode is going to be the same thing every time you do it. At different times of day, it's going to have a whole different feel to it. You come out here doing one of the all-stop services in the middle of the day, you don't see anything like as much traffic, but you will see. You're more likely to see the Union Pacifics doing their deliveries, or the MP15s doing a transfer of some sort or other, because they go out when there is less traffic on the line. So yeah, that's my advice to you, Telex number. If you've got this and you've never tried it, is just jump on in, man, because there is so much in here. And it is perfectly okay for you to kick yourself when you realise how much you've missed, because I did as well. There's lots of little services you can do as well, where there's an opportunity, like I did with this one, to sort of start on foot and do that extra little bit that you don't need to do, but it's kind of fun to do, you know, like the walk-arounds and the setting up the both ends of the machine before setting off, and all that kind of good stuff. It's yeah, it's actually one of my favourite routes, if I'm being honest. So we'll begin the shutdown procedure. I won't go through the whole thing. There we go, we don't actually have to do the brake, the door is closed. You can in theory, as long as you come into one of these dead platforms and not a through platform, which is only an issue up at the other end anyway, because they don't go beyond San Francisco. But as long as you stop at a terminal platform, there is absolutely nothing to stop you doing what I did before, which is going back into free roam. See how long it is before this thing's due to go back out. Sometimes it's maybe 20-30 minutes. I have before played this where I've done bring it into service, and then there's 40 minutes before it's going anywhere. Okay, cool, I'm going to go and have my breakfast and have a wee go on the Switch. I'll come back to it. It's a brilliant route if you want to do that kind of sort of really immersive play. So good for that kind of thing. With the MP15 and stuff like that, you can start on foot and give yourself a couple of moments to set your points and things for the first part of the activity. That kind of depends on you having an idea what you're doing, of course. But yeah, it's a lot to recommend here. So that was part 4, wasn't it, of our round the world little grand tour of all the routes. So we've done New York, California's done. So next, fairly obviously, we would have thought, we'll be heading back off up north, where we'll be doing a run east along the. Can't remember the name of the route now. East along Sandpatch Grade before swinging north and taking a run through the Vancouver area, to round off a short but we've taken in most things, tour of America as is currently represented in Train Some World 2. Hopefully it's going to expand fairly soon as well. I've got a feeling it will. So that's where we're going to wrap this one up. I have a feeling that we're going to find out when HS1 is, or whatever it is they're calling it. It is HS1. Let's be honest. I've got a feeling we're going to get a date for that any day now, and I really, really want to be in a position to have these wrapped up and do the last leg as soon as I can with that. So probably be a few more of these streams coming relatively thick and fast by my recent standards over the next wee while. But for now, that's where we're going to wrap it up. As always, I had great fun driving it. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Those of you who were with us live, thank you very much. And also to those of you watching it later on, appreciate it. And yeah, as always, I'd never give times and dates because I just don't know when I'm going to do it. It's just how it is, unfortunately. But hopefully catch up with you guys soon. But for now, I'm off. Bye bye.